Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
So, Nick, did you get your Earth Day achievement?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
It was went for a good walk along the beach, which was good fun. You?
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, I did, because last year was actually my sister's wedding reception, where I achieved over 80 minutes of exercise on the dance floor, but I never set a workout. So I never got the achievement a year ago. But this year I did. So, yeah, it's great.
Well, if you said a dance workout last year, you wouldn't have gotten it. But this year it was any half an hour workout, which was interesting. A bit of a change from last year. The workout was trying to encourage you to get out there. Like it was 30-minute walk, run, cycle, or roll. But yeah, so now this year they changed it. Any 30-minute workout.
Yeah, it's cool. I love the stickers too. So that was good to do. And the cool animations there. Now, speaking of achievements, anyone following us on social media was seeing that we achieved our second birthday, so yay to us. There you go, blowing out candle noises. And lining up with Earth Day, it's a whole bunch of environmental related things, a major announcement being Daisy. So for anyone that doesn't know, Liam is the iPhone disassembly robot, and they've got a new advanced version called Daisy. So this has come 2 years after Liam, and it's actually sort of partially made of Liam's parts. And this kind of reminded me of like the Adam and Eve thing, like take a little bit of Liam and turn that into Daisy. It's capable of disassembling 200 iPhones per hour. They state it's the most efficient way to reclaim more of the valuable materials stored in an iPhone. Can disassemble up to 9 versions of iPhones. And by comparison, funnily enough, Liam was actually 3 times bigger, 100 foot long, and had 29 robots, whereas Daisy can do a whole lot more at a much smaller size with 5 robots. So it just shows how far it's come. Very impressive to see it in real time as it's doing the disassembly. Like, it just looks insanely fast. So what do you think of the video?
I actually kind of ignored this news cycle for a long time this news event, because I didn't figure that this was a new robot. Only once I saw the name, I was like, oh, Daisy, that's not what it used to be. It used to be Liam, and then only got into it. So like, I haven't really had a chance to properly watch the video, but it's cool nonetheless, right? It's like, I find it quite cool that they've used some of Liam's parts to make Daisy. It's like recycling Inception.
Yeah, exactly. They sort of referred to as possibly like auto cannibalism, but think of it more as, like you said, another version of recycling. And like Liam, there was actually a second Liam, and in this case, they're planning up to 10 daisies, a field of daisies per se, scattered around the Earth. So the first one is in a current secret Austin location. And the second one is planned for Netherlands. So, hey, it'd be cool if we got a daisy in Australia.
Yeah.
But, if you do, anyone managed to watch the video, I'll post a link to it. It looks like it's in fast forward, but I'm kind of gathering it's real time. It's just so precise. And it's just very impressive to watch. So, yeah, another notch on Apple's, environmentally friendly efforts.
Yep.
So, speaking of which, Apple Give Back program this year, Nick, has have a little added incentive.
Yeah, just from April 19th to April 30th, so basically you can either trade in a device for a gift card, or give one back for a free recycle. And they're now giving an extra donation from April 19th to 30th to Conservation International, which I think is really cool, and to help preserve and protect the environment. And Conservation International was founded in 1987 more than 30 countries. So
Yes. Yep.
yeah, I actually took advantage of this, and I will try and take advantage of this again. I've been wanting to recycle my old Apple TV 3 for quite a while. It's obviously like full of plastic and old metal processors and stuff. So I actually really wanted to give that back, but I forgot it and ended up giving back or trading in my Apple Watch Series 2, which I've been trying to sell for a while, but it was probably so far down Facebook Marketplace's list, and then also Michelle's original Apple Watch. So that one we were a bit more tentative about because, it's like the original, but we still have my pretty much day one Series 0. So that's the one I kept anyway, and used it to get a HomePod, which I'll give as a gift to a friend who is buying his first house. So I thought I'll do it then on that weekend so that I can, just give it a little bit extra.
Okay, so you're going from 3 HomePods to 2.
No, I'm staying at 3, and then I got my friend one.
Oh,
using
okay.
the money I got from the trade-in for the gift card.
Oh, very cool, very cool. I'm sure they're very impressed. Okay, now speaking of other impressive things, I had actually heard of the Beer Bash concerts, and so this was a little bit of a surprise to me, but Ziggy Marley, so the son of the infamous Bob Marley, basically put on a concert at Infinite Loop, so the old Apple premises, basically, funnily enough, on April 20th, so on the 20th of the 4th, so there's a lot of 420 reference tie-ins there, but basically, yeah, Ziggy tweeted after the set was done about how this was his first fully powered gig from solar energy, and I just love the photos of like Tim Cook giving him a high five and that sort of thing, so everyone seems pretty pumped on that. But had you actually heard of these Beer Bash events before?
Yeah, so I follow tons and tons of Apple employees on Twitter. No, I'm not trying to extort them for information. I just find them inspirational. But anyway, and yes, Tim's tweeted about them before. I think they've had Gwen Stefani, a bunch of really popular people. And yeah, it's one of those things where I think, if I worked at Apple, that would be, one of those extra like cherries on the top. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool that it was fully powered by solar energy. I know that Apple's in California. I'm not saying they encourage a workforce full of stoners, but I do know that California is definitely more accepting of that, and I know that even Apple's environmental head, it is. But I mean, even before that, things can be legal, but it doesn't mean that the mindset changes, as we know in certain areas. But anyway, Apple's environmental head Lisa Jackson also tweeted like a celebration or some reference to 420. So, if one of the top execs is doing it, and they've made weed jokes on stage, with OS 10 weed, and High Sierra. So, and actually, I don't know if you caught this, but last reference to 420, Swift 4.2.0 was released on the 20th of April, and then one of the actual release notes mentioned it being fully baked. So, yes. It was all over Apple, but good for them for, not taking it themselves too seriously.
Yeah, no, it's always for a bit of a laugh. So, I mean, the main thing is seeing actually what is the next naming of High Sierra, which we've always speculated on, but can they push the weed reference any further? I'm not sure. There was that joke concept that I saw on Twitter that was like macOS Blaze Cliff. So, anyway.
Yeah, I saw that too. It was quite an interesting one.
All right. So, speaking of interesting things, this is a bit of a mashup of Core Focus and Deal Down Under. And on and off of recent episodes, we've been talking about Project Marzipan. So, this is obviously apps that universally work across iOS and macOS. So, Tim Cook talked to Sydney Morning Herald, addressing this idea of merging software. Tim has actually kind of addressed this before, but he basically said, we don't believe in sort of watering down one for the other. And if you begin to merge the two, you begin to make trade-offs and compromises. So this is obviously, to me, a response to all this hype about Marzipan, which is becoming more and more frequent in the tech news. I to me, see this as a bit of a semi-red herring. So it's kind of like cross-platform apps doesn't actually equal merging operating systems. You know how excited I am about the idea of Marzipan. What do you think on Tim sort of restating his opinion?
Yeah, I think, as you say, it is a response to the whole excitement about Marzipan. I think it's a bit about setting expectations, because it doesn't mean that OS 10 or Mac OS, sorry, I was thinking back about when they were making the OS 10 Wii joke, but it doesn't mean that Mac OS itself is going to change fundamentally to become touch first and iOS to become like a point and click interface. So I think there's a bit of confusion around what cross-platform apps really mean, and I think this was just trying to set that expectation. It's going to be quite interesting to see what happens. So I've been trying to play around with take this whole. I'm sure you'll remember that in the beginning I learned Swift through Swift Playgrounds, and I've gradually been trying to take that to the next step over the past couple of months specifically, but ever since I downloaded Swift Playground. So what I noticed in trying to make a watchOS app is that the same frameworks are actually not labeled the same thing, and they don't work in the same way. And given that I just seem to remember that watchOS is like a offshoot of iOS, but it actually isn't. So anyway, they've got these completely different frameworks that work in different ways, and it's quite hard to actually make one app just because like a watch app just because you know how to make an iOS app. And so what this will allow is basically the same frameworks across. So whatever UI element or whatever function or whatever you're calling in the background actually works in the same way across all of the operating systems. Now that is really exciting, but in the same way that just because we have an iPhone app doesn't mean that we have an iPad app, specifically looking at Instagram here. Just one does not equal the other, but it does allow it to become easier for app developers to make Mac apps and watch apps and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I'm not sure we'll see an exact copy of the App Store across all app stores, but we definitely will see an increase in apps, and then hopefully a strengthening in Mac apps.
I am really excited about this, not in the prospect of I think it's suddenly going to change overnight or, we're going to have a whole new interface or anything, but just for the fact that it will be easier to make Mac apps. So if someone is putting in so much effort in their iPad app, then, you could kind of take it from there and add even more functionality for a Mac version. And then the idea of possibly being able to open up an iOS app on your Mac, etc., that, could be handy too. So I'm quite a bit of an advocate for the Mac, as our listeners could tell. So I very much encourage anything that can kind of like refresh it, bring back, some level of excitement and bring back some focus for developers that are sort of thinking, okay, well, Apple are really pushing iOS ahead of anything else, which, yes, they are in the sense that because it's their most popular devices. But if this is a way to kind of like have the Mac continue to live on and thrive and not sort of get pushed to the side, it's a bit. I'm not ever thinking that the Mac will go away completely, but this is just a good way to kind of spark a bit more of interest in it.
Yeah, one of the things that I think just to go back a little bit to Tim's merging iOS and macOS views, I've been fully on board with that for a while, and I do think that each of them does the best for what they're designed for. Having said that, I have come across one good, probably excellent argument on Twitter against it, which I hadn't ever considered before, and that was around the concept of kids. And basically, kids are using iPads before they can read. And so touch devices are completely natural for kids. And so now if you're about like 5, 6, 7 years old and then pick up a Mac or a MacBook and you go to scroll, it doesn't actually work, right? And so that's sort of the more and the further down we get down the road, can they really resist this forever? And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they can resist it, but I also don't, and I don't think they will, but I do think that it will probably require a bit of a change in the way Mac OS works, so we'll see what happens, but they have to make a touchscreen at some point in the next, and it doesn't have to be in the next 2 years, but at least in 5 to 10 years, I just don't see this being a permanent thing.
Yeah, I can certainly get on board with that. I also think in the instance of, okay, so basically, so something I use a lot, Adobe apps, right? Adobe programs obviously use on the Mac all the time. Now, Adobe's actual iOS apps, they've all been they've taken one program essentially and split it into several apps, and they're handy in their own way, but you want it all in one space, right? And that's where Affinity Photo did really well in sort of being the closest to a Photoshop on iPad. The interface takes a bit to get used to, but very impressed with how it runs. Having something like this hopefully could mean that Adobe could actually get on board and deliver an actual proper Photoshop for iPad or Illustrator for iPad or something like that. I really feel like they're losing a lot of interest in that space because someone like Affinity has come on board and they've come out with Affinity Designer, which is like their own version of a layout program for iPad. So, if they can help by Apple doing this, if they can break down the barrier or the hesitation because someone has to rebuild an app again in a different framework for Mac as they do for iOS, if they can knock that wall down, then hopefully we can get a bit more of this, a bit more of an impressive iPad experience from such of these large companies, such as Adobe. So, yeah, we'll wait and see what happens. Okay, so diving straight into the rumour mill, iPhone SE2. Is it actually coming, Nick?
Wow, this is one that we all debate and think about and get excited for and be let down by. And iPhone SE2. Firstly, what does that even mean? Do we even know? So I guess why are we even talking about it again? A Eurasian regulatory database which confirmed AirPods, iPhone 7, MacBooks, and the recent iPad has referenced an iPhone running iOS 11 with 11 new iPhone model identifiers. And in the past, we've seen these regulatory filings happen about 2 to 5 weeks in advance of the release. Given that flagship iPhones have just been released, like in the past 6 months, and the red iPhone 8 in the last 2 weeks, I don't think, and no one thinks that this is an update to the flagship lineup, and so it's probable that it's the SE2. Obviously, we expect, or I'm pretty sure you would expect the same, that the 2 gold models would be condensed into one. Yeah, so I guess like the 11 model identifier.
It's a strange number.
Yeah, it can be a bit misleading because sometimes they'll have like region-specific subsets. Like they might have only a 32 gig in 3 colors for only India, and developing markets. So it's sometimes hard to actually tell. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with the fact that the 11 model identifiers, but yeah, I expect just the three colors and 2 storage tiers across, with being 32 and 128.
Yeah, I was trying to make up that figure, and I was like, well, it can only be the 3 colors because you assume they wouldn't retain rose gold, and then I don't think they'd push to 3 storage tiers given the sort of where the SE sits in the iPhone lineup. So, that cuts it down from what were 8 down to 6. But then, as you said, the remaining number between 6 and 11 can be made up of these different variations. So, in saying that, I kind of gathered that you'd sort of written off the idea of a SE2 a while ago. I've always been holding on to the hope that it would come, just because I feel like there still is that market for it. I know my father-in-law, he has an SE, that's going great, but I know that when the time comes, he'll want to upgrade and he'll want the same size phone. He doesn't want a phone that's any larger. He really loves the form factor, so something like an SE2 would perfectly fill that gap. In saying that, assuming that it is coming, are you still sticking to your stance of if it does, it would be the same design and just a spec bump?
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking that it won't have a glass back. I'm thinking it will just be exactly the same design. Obviously, this is one of those times that I'd prefer to not be right, because more features is the better for everyone. But I just think that the whole draw for the SE2 for Apple is they know they can make it at a really low price because they can keep the exact same manufacturing process for the body and that. So, I mean, yeah, I'll stick with that.
I think while in our predictions I said, I feel like it could, if it had a redesign, it could go the way of like a small iPhone 8, so of curved edges and a glass back. But I am more inclined to say, okay, yeah, no glass back, keep the aluminium back. But if they did even just have rounded edges just for the design to tie in more with the current flagships, that doesn't seem too far out of the question, because, you know, same sort of materials anyway, just a slight redesign, but screen size the same, bezels would be the same. So, yeah. I'll believe it when I see it. Put it that way. I do, given the track record of these Eurasian filings, they haven't been wrong yet, but there's nothing that's concrete that it is an iPhone SE2. I assume it is. I hope it comes so we can just have it out there and stop talking about it.
Yeah. How many iPhones are there at the moment? If you think about it, there are 2 storage tiers in 3 colors. That's 6. And then 2 models are, it's 12 already just on 8s and 8 pluses, plus another color. So that'll be like 16 in 8s and 8 pluses, plus the 4 for 10. So that'll be 20. So I was thinking maybe, what if it was like just completely updated colors on those, like new like colors? But yeah, unlikely. Oh well.
Oh well, we'll see. Given the timing, I would assume this wouldn't happen in June, would have nothing to do with WWDC because it literally has no place for it. So a quiet online release in May, and that's probably about as far as his rumors go.
I think this is the first time that we've agreed on the way that it'll be released. Usually you reckon for sure keynote.
That's because I love the keynotes. I'm still waiting for the HomePod keynote. And you're like, we've already had it. I'm like, yeah, but it needs its own event. Anyway, that doesn't matter. The time has passed for that.
That's for sure. What about when AirPlay 2 is released? They could have a keynote there for the proper launch.
Nah, I've given up on the HomePod keynote now altogether. Speaking of things that could possibly happen at WWDC is the idea of third-party watch faces. So there's a bit of code in watchOS 4.3.1. This and it states within it, this is where the third-party face config bundle generation would happen. So the tech community is kind of like erupted and gone, well, this is confirmed, third-party watch faces are coming. But this sort of reference in the code is seemingly not something new. And it's sort of been pointed out that this is more likely referring to how third parties can add their own complications, which they can already do, to some degree. So I want to kind of, rather than delve into actual watch faces, I want to sort of discuss our opinions on a few different aspects of this if it happens. What do you think about the idea of a dedicated watch face store? And by this I mean how strict, this is for third-party developers, how strict should the design guidelines be if they're submitting a new watch face design? Where should a watch face store exist? And should there be pricing involved?
Okay, so assuming that it should exist in the first place, which I think is already debatable, okay? I think there wouldn't be a point in doing it if the design guidelines were really strict. So I don't think they should really even exist if they, oh man, it's so hard. It's so hard because the whole point is that it's not customizable enough according to a certain population of Apple Watch users, and that this would, make it exponentially more customizable. So I think to satisfy those users, the design guidelines shouldn't be strict. Personally, I think they should be strict because I've owned a Pebble Watch and the stuff that was in there was horrendous. Now, okay, I will probably mention owning a Pebble Watch and what custom watch faces meant a few times coming up, but where it should exist, I think it should exist, if it did, in the Watch app, just as another tab
of course,
next to the App Store as a separate Watch app store. Or a category, just a category within the Watch apps.
It could be within the gallery, the watch face gallery.
Oh, yeah, actually, that would be a good one. Yeah, I hardly ever go in there. I forgot what it looks like, but yes, that would be a good one. And then I do think there should be pricing just to encourage quality.
Like iMessage app style pricing? So it's a relatively small cost, but...
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, cool. Okay, so for me, yes, definitely some strict design guidelines, because I've also heard from people that are currently running Wear OS, the renamed Android operating system for their wearables, basically said that it's open for third parties to create their own watch faces, and it's an absolute shit show. There's just full of absolute crap and really ugly looking faces, and faces that just are trying to emulate other designs but poorly. And I'm like, I do not want that for the Apple Watch at all. That would be... I like the Apple designed approach, and after this, I think we're going to discuss the idea about basically more of a curated approach, I think, to additional watch faces. But anyway, same thing. If it should exist in the watch app somewhere, prices like the iMessage apps. But, okay, in saying that, if third-party developers were given access to create their own watch faces, to what level should it be? So, forgetting about the idea of the watch face store, should it be complete watch faces from scratch? Or maybe expanding on complications, or opening up, say, the Siri watch face? Or could it be somewhere in the middle where they can do more than complications? They can create their own face, but to the level of, say, maybe custom colors and fonts, and that's about it. What sort of balance are you thinking would be acceptable?
I don't think they can give templates that are already existing watch faces. I just don't think extra colors will cut it, because there are so many colors already that Apple has. So I also think that adding your app as a data source to the Siri watch face is imperative and needs to happen. But I think that in terms of actual watch face for that developer, it has to be more extendable.
No, I would imagine that if they announce, you can customize watch faces, everyone would, erupt in a huge cheer, and then they go on to say, okay, well, we've created these, Apple design templates for you, and that would do more damage than good. They may as well just not give them that if that's going to be the option. So, this is a hard one, because if it's like a free-for-all, like open to any developer, I would rather them probably not have the access at all and just say open up the Siri watch face. But in saying that, there's a third idea. So the idea of Apple selecting high-profile and awarded app developers or brands to basically co-create faces with. So what they could do is they could start... So obviously they got Nike and Hermes. They could expand on that idea. So they could start with 5... featured or popular apps at WWDC, and then basically expand from there. How they could add more people to this list is there might be like a list of criteria, so you could apply to become a face creator, and this, the criteria could be based on something like app popularity, how up to date you keep your app, if you utilize iOS specific features like 3D touch or true depth camera or Face ID and such. So what do you think about that idea? like scrap the idea of a free-for-all watch face store and more have, here are some 5 new watch faces that we co-design with some big popular app.
Yeah, I both like this idea and dislike this idea because I'll start with why I like it, right? You look at some really good third parties like Things or Day One Journal. Did Apple buy Day One? Someone bought Day One.
Sounds familiar.
I'll have to double check that one. Anyway, so there's some really good other apps that I think if you had like a to-do watch face that was just purpose built to get things done, tick things off, create new reminders, just sort of like, because I guess doing stuff is time based. It's like on this continuation. So that makes sense to me. I'm not sure that a photo editing app maybe they could have like, anyway, so let's just start with that. So you could have like some really well thought out, powerful apps that live on the front of your watch and are permanently there every time you raise your wrist. No need to wait. All of that stuff sounds great. Now, on the other hand, the whole attraction to the App Store and why it's been so successful is that really the limitations to getting on there are removed. There's no it's open to anyone if they create something good enough. And for me, if that was taken away, I would be pretty disappointed because you're kind of ruining the possibility of good ideas not making it there just because you haven't built something else successful. So yeah,
it's a hard one to decide because, as you said, I think so far of the things we've discussed, I would say if you go for a dedicated watch face store, but the design guidelines are quite strict, that's probably the best compromise. I'm feeling like enough to at least give people the chance to submit a design and not restrict them based on their popularity or something like that. But yeah. And lastly, there was a concept in January by Matt Birchler of Birch Tree, and one of the features he put in this was the idea of ambient watch faces. So this is similar to like an always on display where basically you get you might have a standard clock style watch face and you see just the hands and just the time, and then when you raise your wrist to wake, the complications and everything appear. So this is kind of similar to your idea of what theater mode should be, where you see like the outline of the message notification you see and then you can tap to reveal the full thing. So this doesn't specifically tie into, third parties submitting watch faces, but I'd just like to float the idea. So do you think something like that could come to watchOS 5?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think Apple is actually moving pretty quickly in terms of what they've added to watchOS and stuff that we hadn't thought about before. Or, they have taken quite a few things and run with it. So yeah, I don't see why not.
I think that'd certainly be good to remove that complaint that some people have that, race to wake when they're racing their wrist, doesn't work every time, depending on, the angle they hold it at or whatever. And I can vouch for that too. It doesn't work for me every time, particularly if I'm lying down. Sometimes I have to purposefully tap it or raise it again quickly to kind of get it to wake up. So I'd find that very handy. But yeah, ultimately in the end, which option are you swaying with for the idea of third-party watch faces?
I don't think we'll see them yet. I am surprised that you have had issues with raise to wake. I almost never have that issue. I would say maybe once a month where it's a genuine fluid wrist like raise and it doesn't get it. I must say, I think Apple Watch has surprised me on that in being way better than I'd ever imagined. So
when I say I vouch for that, it occurs, but not to the point that I really complain about it at all. It's mainly if I move my wrist too slowly or something.
Yeah, for me, the complaint or the usefulness would just be the fact that there's some situations where I actually can't raise my wrist. Say, for example, I'm carrying something. I just want to see that notification come in. Like, I would just love that, sort of ambient outline notification to come up. So those, I'm not saying that's not useful. It's just that specifically for raising, I never have the issue.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess it would be good, the idea of just basically the time always being visible or something like that. All right, now moving on to one last piece about a new colour of iPhone. So the FCC has published photos of what appears to be a gold iPhone 10 earlier this month, and the pictures are dated September 2017. So it looks like it features a gold stainless steel frame, lighter gold glass back, which matches like the iPhone 8. So any of the tech news sources state that there's no sort of giveaway signs, that it's been photoshopped to that. I've thoroughly looked over it. Obviously, the images aren't that high resolution to really be able to pick it apart, but I wouldn't say it's impossible that it can't have been photoshopped. But anyway, regardless of that, it is how I envisioned a gold iPhone 10 to be. So, assuming that is legit, what do you think is the reason they could have pulled this, or would you expect that they might be holding it out for this September?
I don't know if they're holding it out. So I think one of the things might be have been around supply. So we knew that going in, and even a couple of weeks after iPhone 10 was released, supply was really low. And one of the ways to make sure that you can meet demand is by reducing your SKUs. So that could be one reason. There could also be things like the coating didn't stay properly. It's possible that you can chip off the space gray coating, and so if you could do the same to gold, maybe that was happening too quickly. Maybe the alloy wasn't sticking nicely. Could be any number of reasons, but we definitely know that Apple was serious about it, and I believe that these are real, but it does show you that they can be far down the road, but they definitely have the power and the ability to say no. And I would guess that it wasn't just one of these manufactured, but probably thousands. So yeah, it's cool to see, right? It's like when you saw the prototypes of the original iPhone that were never released. Obviously, it was just development. It's always from a fan's point of view. People actually genuinely care about Apple's history and what they do and their thought process more so than some basic feature on an iPhone. This is something that is like, it's just cool to see, right? It's like meeting Craig Federighi. It's just, yep.
Yeah. There was the idea floated around that they could possibly not have released this because the fact that it's essentially imitating the look of real gold. Original Apple Watch edition made out of actual gold looks closer to stainless steel gold, right, according to this image. So do you think there's might have been a thing where they created it, submitted it, and then possibly pulled it? Johnny Ive felt uncomfortable with it or something?
I did hear this, and the other corresponding thing was Johnny Ive just came back from designing Apple Park and was like, "Hey, no, I'm not doing that one." But yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it had I don't think it was a decision based on, this is a bit like the Apple Watch edition we released how many years ago was it? 3 years ago. So no, I don't think so. But there was one thing I wanted to say about it, which is just slipping in my mind. If I remember, I'll come back to it. But
while you're trying to grasp your thoughts back, if it looked like this and there was an updated iPhone 10 in September, would you upgrade for that?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
I do remember what I was going to say, and it is along the lines of, okay, so if this looks like that gold from the Apple Watch, it reminded me of the endless thought process I've had in my head about which Apple Watch does Apple think is the corresponding Apple Watch for the iPhone 10 Space Gray. I think it's obvious that the stainless steel is the corresponding Apple Watch for the silver iPhone 10, but which one for the Space Gray?
Space Black.
Well, we have Space Black, we have actual Space Gray, and then we have Gray Ceramic. Now, I'll lead you a little bit through my thought process.
Yeah.
It's like Grey ceramic is high, top of the line, same as as iPhone 10. So it's like they're both grey, they're both really expensive, and top of the line. So is it that one? And then Space Black is the closest in terms of color, and like makeup. It's this anodized, or not anodized, but like it's carbon coated stainless steel. And then you've got the Space Grey, which is correspondingly named. So yeah.
They should have just called the Space Grey iPhone 10 Space Black. It just would have made so much more sense. But yeah, I'm going to go with Space Black just from a visual perspective, regardless of the name. So
actually, I think it's a great addition. But anyway, carry on.
Okay, wait. So you're thinking it's more aligned with the ceramic?
Yeah, I think that's the one. If they were to say, okay, do you want like the ones that are meant to be together that we envision as our best products, I think would be those two.
Yeah. Oh man, yep. Looks like your head's been stuck in outer space for a while.
Oh man, space Datsun's 420.
Yes, that's it. The funny thing about podcasting is that you can't actually hear like the crowd sighing or reacting to.
I think that works to your benefit.
All right. Speaking of having the munchies, edible extras.
Yes.
The revamped App Store since iOS 11, which I absolutely adore, seems to have had a positive impact on featured apps. So what's happening here?
Yeah, this is no surprise. So with iOS 11, there's an App Store revamp where they separated apps and games into their own tabs and have like a daily feed. It's basically like Instagram for apps. And, unsurprisingly, that's resulted in an increase of downloads. I know that I browse it more, but I don't think I actually download much more than I ever did. Anyway, they've seen that in the US store only, they only have stats for the US store, but featured apps have gone up 800% increase in downloads. So yeah, I guess it's quantifying what being featured really means. As I say, it's no surprise. It's primarily the larger developers have been featured.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shame because, I think it was the stat was something like out of 15, 13 of them were large developers and then 2 were indie developers. But I've seemed to sort of think that I've actually found more indie level apps since the redesign. Because I do actually check it every now and then. And so for discoverability, at least, it's been good. Because beforehand, they did have a featured sort of banner at the top in the App Store, but it was nowhere near to the level that this version is. So yeah, hey, if it's working for developers, I guess based on those stats, you just hope that somehow indie developers could get a bit more of a leg up. But yeah. Last little note on that: do you think that as a way to kind of give small developers some more time in the spotlight, could they run some kind of like indie developer lottery as a way to become a featured application?
I think this is a bit difficult because there eventually becomes a line you have to draw. I think possibly there should be like an exclusion on the number of days before you cycled back into being featured, or a limit on the number of days your banner can be in the top of like the apps or games section instead of the today section. I think there should be some sort of control around that, and that I think would be the best way to keep it moving, and therefore more likely to get indie devs, or at least it's a bit of like a self-classified indie dev. But anyway, I don't know.
Maybe one day you could get your app featured on there.
Oh man, that would be crazy. Yeah, so still a couple of still a little while before I'm ready to show what I've been developing, but certainly trying to make use of Apple's latest operating system features. But I think I'll also make use of the $100 App Store credit for advertising and some of those things. So yeah, we'll see.
I think maybe by the time you launch that, I'll actually have gotten around to making a sticker pack, but there you go. All right, so we'll finish it off with a bit of battery news because everyone loves to hear about Apple and battery-related stuff. This one, yeah, it's not too bad. So basically the non-touch bar version of the 13-inch MacBook Pro, a small amount of them between October 2016 to 2017, basically have essentially underperforming batteries. So there's a verification link on Apple's site that you can put your serial in to see if your MacBook Pro is affected. It doesn't extend the warranty at all. They also detect if you've already paid for a replacement battery and you get a refund, so that's good. And this battery replacement program is available for 5 years. Unfortunately, I never got to try the 6S replacement because the whole my wife's phone getting thrown in the toilet and dying. But that was eligible at the time. And I remember I was that close to actually taking action with it. But it met an aquatic fate. So there you go. But yeah, it's good that this sort of thing has been recognised and there's a program in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Apple is pretty good with this stuff. They, take quality seriously, and yeah, I think they wouldn't let people down if they know that the fault is on their side. Or their
the strange thing is that it seemed to be form factor related from some reports I read because of the way this one's designed versus a touch bar one. Don't take my word for that, but it's something to do with, I think it's something to do with when it's shut, it was pressing down on the battery or something like that, but I don't know. Yeah, anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 49 of Apple Slice. If you'd like to find us in your player, we are available at Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Casts, New App Breaker, Stitcher, and even Spotify and a whole bunch of others. So if you can't find us, please let us know and we'll do what we can to make ourselves available. Also now at appleslice.com.au, you'll see with the episode posts, there are snippet videos. So if you kind of want to gather a bit of a taste of what the episode's about, you can listen to that. They're a few minutes long. Get the full episode with the links below the video. Of course, we also post to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Just search for Apple Slice Podcast. And I've actually created a Facebook group called Australian Apple Fans associated with our page if you want to join in on some of the conversation. And lastly, Nick, we're also available at one other place. Where is that? Yeah,
we are part of Ozcast Network, so you can check out our podcast and a whole bunch of other really great Australian podcasts on ozcastnetwork.com, AUSCAST network.com.
I don't think anyone could get it wrong with that pronunciation there, so thanks for doing that. One last thing before we sign off is you were right. I could not hack a third-party watch band.
I knew this one from the minute that you said you were getting it. I've known you for 2 years now. I knew that because I've seen these things, right? I've seen them in real life around, and I just know they look clunky. And the hope is there when you look online, you think, wow, that looks really smart, looks like Apple's one, or looks better than Apple's one, and then you get it and it's just not great. So it's disappointing.
Mine was not so much to look, because I was impressed with the packaging. I was impressed with the speed of delivery. It came in from America in about a week. The stainless steel black lugs, they looked pretty good. Didn't quite match the space black, but better than silver, right? But yeah, I think it was just the feel of it. And I don't know, it just didn't seem quite as elegant as Apple's option, obviously. But it had this cool sort of like slate leather style, it was leather, on the actual band, and everything else was black stainless steel, but it actually was uncomfortable to wear, unfortunately for me. So I'm hopefully, someone else out there it would fit, but there wasn't a knot. It was either too tight or too loose. And I had it on for about 2 minutes and I was like, no, this is actually digging against the bones of my wrist. So, yep, straight back in the packaging, fresh as anything. So if anyone's keen.
How far must the spaces be between the loops? Because if it was leather, I would suggest, wearing a little bit until it stretches. But if it's cutting into your wrist, then obviously that won't work.
Yeah, they were relatively close. All right, so I did think that. I thought, okay, it could stretch, but I think by default I had that idea in my head of this isn't an Apple one, So even from opening it, I was like, this better be perfect. Otherwise, I'm taking it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people out there that love their third-party watch bands. Plenty of people in this Facebook Apple Watch users group that love them. So not knocking that. It's just my OCD, everything wanting to be Apple tendencies.
Yeah. So given that, are you more likely to try my original suggestion? So my suggestion was go to eBay, pick up some space black or space gray lugs for $10 to $30, or even I think they start at $5. But with a kit and maybe more than one, probably looking at like $15 to $30 plus an Apple Watch leather band.
Who makes the lugs?
Oh, they are just like made in some factory, not Apple. But they look pretty similar.
I don't know if I'll be able to hack that.
Well, the thing is though that you use the actual band from Apple, and then the lug is like just color matched and hopefully same shape.
I think the other problem I had with the third party one was that the lugs were too long, so
No.
Yeah, like in the sense that everything was fine, but it was like the watch was kind of raised up a bit too high. So maybe that kind of was a bit of the whole not sitting as well as I'd like or as flush as I'd like.
All right.
But yeah, anyway, that brings us to the end of the episode and my first and last attempt at buying a third-party watch band. But there you go. It's been great talking to you, Nick, and yeah, catch you in the next episode.
Bye.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.